Maybe I need to hit this and wake Dakota up, right? My name is Harold Pearson. I am alcoholic. I'm grateful to be here tonight. I'm grateful that Dakota, I don't know, Tuesday, Wednesday, when it was, he called me that morning. And I had no idea what he wanted, and then he asked me about it here, and I said, sure. And then he, and I wasn't thinking about it Christmas Eve. I was just thinking about it. I knew it was Saturday night here at the Wilder building, and I kept thinking I had something Saturday night, but I said, Dakota, if I find out today I do have something, I'll call you back. If not, I'll look forward to seeing you Saturday night. And then after that, I realized it was, Christmas Eve. So what an honor, what a privilege. I think one other time in my recovery, I have spoken at a meeting on Christmas Eve. And, some reason or other, it doesn't even seem like Christmas Eve. I mean, I don't know, I guess the weather has something to do with that, but also you usually think about Christmas being during the week, not on the weekend. But anyway, I am grateful for that. And one of the promises, and I thought we'd have a lot more reading tonight. Y'all don't read enough here. I had to get up here too quick. But anyway, one of the promises is, we will know peace. And let me tell you about this morning. I was on the way out to the colony about 7 o'clock, and I wasn't thinking a whole lot about it other than it was a nice morning and so forth. There's a few drops of rain on my windshield, but other than that, it was real nice. And usually I did my morning this morning the way I usually start my day. Maybe I'll tell you about that later. But anyway, as I pulled out on the Highway 220, and there wasn't any traffic or anything, I said, boy, this is peace. And the promise is we will know peace. So for about the next 30 seconds, maybe the next minute, maybe a whole minute, I experienced peace. We will know peace, and that was peace. And so I'm grateful that the program taught me that we will know peace, that we will comprehend that called serenity. And it's been a great day. I spent I came back home about 10 today and spent the rest of the day with my wife. She's sick, or she would be here tonight, but when I got something to eat and just did a few things together, and then spent the afternoon watching a ball game. But it was very peaceful, serene. And this is what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous has given me. I believe I am here tonight because I've been given a gift, and it's called recovery, and it's called this program. But I do have a home group. It's the Old Time Structure Group, and we meet on Wednesday night at Samaritan Chapel at 7 o'clock. We'd love to have you there. Small meeting, small group, but it's a great meeting. And matter of fact, this past week, Frank got in on the well, it wasn't even a business meeting. We just decided to eat, and so we met at 6 instead of 7 and had hot dogs. So instead of having all the Christmas food stuff and Thanksgiving food stuff, we had hot dogs. And boy, they were good. I ate 3 of them. But anyway, we do eat every once in a while, but it's a great group. We'd love to have you there. I have a sponsor, and he has a sponsor. Matter of fact, I think he has 2. He probably needs them. But anyway, and my sobriety date is February 21st, 1981. And the Wilder building is special to me. And I attended my first meeting here in October of 1977. And as a matter of fact, I probably sat about where I was sitting at there tonight. The best I can remember. I was in bad shape that night. I didn't know what I was at AA meeting for, and the other mistake, and keep this in mind, if you see an alcoholic come through that door, and he hadn't been detoxed, and he's just coming off a drunk, don't put a cup of coffee in his hand. But somebody went back here and got a cup of coffee and brought it out there to me that night, and I set it on the floor immediately and left it sitting there, and that's about what I remember about that meeting. But it was on a Tuesday night, so I'm sure it was a discussion meeting, and so I don't know where they had the tables. I don't think they had the tables then yet. But anyway, that was my first meeting with Alcoholics Anonymous. Another thing about Wilder building here just a few years ago, and I don't know what night that was. It was a discussion meeting naturally, and it wasn't Saturday night naturally. It wasn't a speaker meeting, but it might have been Sunday night. It might have been, possibly it was Tuesday night. But I was here at this meeting, and the reason I was at this meeting was to see my daughter pick up a year's chip. And medallion in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was overjoyed. And I remember sitting back there and so forth, and whoever was chairing the meeting that night, and I'm sure they had a topic for the meeting, but as most meetings, you asked, well, does anybody have anything they need to talk about or need to bring up or anything or anything bothered anyone? And somebody brought up the topic that a friend of theirs that day had committed suicide. And I thought immediately, the old selfish, self-centered part of me popped up, and I thought to myself, now why in the world? I'm here to celebrate my daughter's anniversary and see her pick up a medallion. And just a little over a year prior to that, a year and a half prior to that, her brother, my son, had taken his life because of the disease of addiction. And I didn't want to have to, go through that. But everybody in that room that night needed to hear what was said, and I needed to hear what was said also. Because, see, so easily I forgot that, the program Alcoholics Anonymous is about celebration and picking up chips and everything else. But it's about us supporting and loving each other and listening to each other through those tough times. See, I quickly forgot that when my son died, I used to hear people stand behind this podium, other podiums, and talk about losing children or losing loved ones to the disease of addiction. And I would think, how in the world do they get through it? How in the world do you get through it? Well, I found out how you get through it. Through the arms and the loved ones that's in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and people that's in this room now and the people in the other rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous during that time and people that was in Al-Anon and everything. I was able to experience God's love, and I never thought about drinking, and I never thought about doing anything else during that time. I just thought about, trying to make it a day at a time. And so that night I forgot, that, the program's about loving one another, and that man needed loving that night because he had lost a friend to the disease of addiction. He needed, it's just as much as I did when I lost my son. But yet the selfish, self-centered side of me wanted to say, wow, we got to talk about that tonight. I'm here to celebrate and so forth. But yeah, program of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's about celebration, but it's also about the hurt, pain, but also being able to support each other through those times. Hopefully I'll tell you a little bit more about that first meeting here and what happened after that. I am grateful, and since I'm talking about my daughter, some of you in here know Christy, and she's doing well. I visited her last Friday up at the treatment facility up in Ridgecrest, North Carolina. Hopefully she's up there for a year, and she's doing well, and so forth. She celebrated. After that year, she went back out after a period of time, and I thought she was going to die. I didn't know where she was living or not this last time. But anyway, she is doing well, and I hope that maybe one day we'll be able to celebrate another year. But I do know that it's a day at a time, and that's something else that this program has taught me. The longer I stay in it, the more I believe in the power of one day at a time. Because I see people, time after time after time, they're doing well, and the next thing you know, they're drunk again, and so forth, and die as a result of this illness. So I do believe in that power of just living one day at a time, and that's another great thing that I realized not only is it a gift, but one day at a time. And I remember when I first came into it, that sort of fascinated me. And I tell people that I remember going to my sister's house a few days after I'd been to my first meeting, and telling them, about one day at a time, one day at a time. And I think in my sick mind, and I thought that, hey, in a few weeks I won't get drunk. It'll be all right. You just stay sober one day at a time. And eventually I did drink again, as you know, my sobriety date changed from the initial deal in October of 1977. But anyway, I was born over here I was born in South Carolina, was raised up in Scotland County. No reason really to be an alcoholic other than genetics. I was raised in a family where there's no alcohol. I realize now just good, hardworking, honest people who sacrificed a lot. I was adopted. My biological father was alcoholic. my biological mother, who had died when I was 2.5 years old, and that's the reason I was adopted and so forth. But she had two brothers who died as a result of alcoholism. Matter of fact, they took their lives. And that was before I was born, so I didn't know them or anything. But like I say, my biological father was alcoholic, and due to his illness, that my biological mother decided that she knew she was going to die, so she asked my aunt if she would take me, and they later adopted me. And I had a name change as a result of that, when I didn't understand name changes and understand who was better, Pearson or Peel, and all that crazy stuff going on in the mind. And you don't talk to anybody about that, but had a lot of wondering about it and so forth. And through school, as we hear so many talk about, that they felt different, and I did. I felt different. But on the outside, things look well. Like I say, I had a nickname. They called me Pierce, and I've used to accuse people of being spoiled and so forth, but I realized I was spoiled. I was raised up as the only child, and these parents that raised me, they had two grown children, but they were old enough to have been my grandparents, and that's something else. I thought it was old fogies and didn't understand. They wasn't hip and knew all this good stuff that other kids' parents and. So I thought I was different and all, but they actually spoiled me. I realized that I didn't get a lot, but I got a lot more than I really needed, and all. And my adopted mother, was very firm. She was she would wear your tail out. And today I'm grateful for that. She didn't spare the rod, and so forth. But anyway, my adopted father died when I was 13. I didn't have a lot of success with parents. He was another parent out of my life, and then. When I was 18, my biological father died, and when I was 20, my adopted mother died. So I've gone through two sets of parents right quick by the time I'm 20. But none of that had anything to do with my drinking. I decided, I don't know what, in ninth grade, I think it was, started riding the back of an activity bus, going to play basketball, and some of the older boys get hold of some rock and roll wine, 35 cents a half pint. And we'd throw some money in for them to get it, and they would get it. And I remember drinking some of it, but I don't remember any effect from it, anything else. But I was drinking wine with the bigger boys, the older boys, and I was okay. It was a year later that I got drunk the first time, and it was on a Sunday, and what happened? I got drunk. I got sick. I had a blackout, or I went in a blackout. I stayed in a blackout. I don't remember too much about the whole deal. But what I remembered Monday at school, other people was talking about, man, they said you got drunk yesterday. They said you were a fool and this and that. So here I am getting attention that way, and right on through high school, it was. Anytime I got a chance to drink, I drank. Anytime I drank, most of the time if I got enough to drink, I got drunk. But trying to control it. I mean, here I am trying to control it because small town, and my mother was a nurse at this doctor's office where it seemed like most of the people came. And by this time, there wasn't nobody at home but me and her. And I was trying to keep it hid. I didn't want her to find out about it because I knew she would still wear my tail out. It didn't matter how big I was. And of course, I wasn't too big, but anyway, and so I tried to keep it hid from her, and that was a job. But anyway, I was able to do that. And before I graduated from high school, I got it was about 6 weeks prior to graduation. I got drunk, and I'd planned to get drunk that day because she was going to be out of town. She was going to Charlotte. Her and another lady to see. This will really date me. What was the name of the? Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? That was playing, and back then movies to get to this area usually took several months. They don't just come out. And so they wanted to see it. They went up to Charlotte to see it. I knew she was going to be out of town. I knew I could get drunk early that day and be sober by the time she got back home. That was my plans anyway, And of course, I didn't plan on going back to school. I drove a school bus, and so I drove a school bus, but I was drinking white liquor, creek liquor. I used to finally got hold of some of that stuff, and I liked it. And I was driving the bus, drinking it that morning, and got to school and had somebody run me home, and me and my buddy got my car, and we went out and drank and got drunk. And I don't know, around noon that day, I remember they were dedicating annual that day, and I needed to be there. And went back to school, and this was a total disaster. And the principal of school was in the hospital. Now, he believed any and everything I said and all, but the coach who had run-ins, I'd played ball for him and everything, but he didn't like me. He saw through my bull crap and so forth, and I didn't like him either. But he was acting principal, and but they were able to get me away from school before he could get hold of me. And but I got home, and then but before I left, he had got my bus license. I turned my bus license in. He took them or told me I couldn't drive a bus. But anyway, I had to come up with a plan, so I did. Before my mother got home, I knew that it was going to be bad to find out that I was at school drunk, and because honestly, at that time, she did not. She had no inkling that I was drinking, and when that episode was over, she still didn't believe I drank. I had convinced her. She was a nurse, like I say, that there was some Darvon that was on the mantelpiece at home that you took for pain and so forth, and that I told her I had a severe headache after she left, and I said I took one of those, and I took some more. I said I don't know how many I took, and I said. Next thing I know, I'm at school, and they think I'm drunk. And I said, Mama, that's all it was. And she believed me, because by this time I took a couple of baths and showers and put on shaving lotion and all that kind of stuff. Wouldn't even hardly shaving then. But anyway, I was able to, convince her I wasn't. And the doctor that she worked for said he would sign a certificate. She kept me out of school for a couple of days till the acting principal got back to school. And like I say, he believed everything. So I was able to graduate. But anyway, out of high school, I went in the military, and I tell people that 2 years and 8 months in the military, and all I can say was it was just a big trunk, I was a good soldier. I knew how to soldier. I could soldier, and so forth, and I was available to do whatever they needed me to do. But if I had opportunity to drink, I drank, and it was blackout drinking. I remember spending a year over in Thailand, and I always had shakes from the get-go. I used to see the store I used to work in when I was a teenager in high school. I'd see guys come in that store in the morning, get a Coca-Cola, and get a little old bottle of spirits of ammonia, and a little brown bottle, and they'd pour some of that Coca-Cola out and pour that spirits of ammonia in that thing, and they'd drink it. And I didn't know what they were doing, but I would notice later, they'd quit shaking things such as this, and so forth. I didn't know later on in my life that I'd be doing the same thing. And so here I am overseas, and of course they didn't have spirits of ammonia that I know of, but we had plenty of alcohol, and everybody drank, and we drank a lot. But I would need to ride home, and I would be shaking so bad I couldn't hold a pen to write. And then I'd have to go get something to drink in order to ride home, and after drinking a few beers to calm my nerves, I didn't care about riding home. And so that's sort of the way it was. I came back stateside, and I was down in Florida, and my mother was diagnosed with cancer, and so she was the only living parent or person I had left, and of course I was being only son, I was in the military, and they decided I need to come home and see about her. Now I knew that my drinking was out of control. I knew if I came home and took a drink that they'd be wasting their time. That I knew when I drank I had no control, and that's what happened. I came home in November of 1967. That November I came home, and I remember on the way home thinking that I'm not going to drink. I said November 67. It was actually November 68. But anyway, I came home. And she died that following March of 69. And during that time period, it was time after time after time of people having to tote me in the house, or just one drunken episode after another, bouts of just profanity and things such as this. And she realized then that, her son was alcoholic. It was during that time she told me one morning, and she looked me in the face and told me, she said, "Son, you're going to be just like your daddy." talking about my biological daddy, and I didn't ask her what that was or anything else, but she told me, she said he would drink shoe polish after each trainer through Loaf Bridge, you know. And all I was trying to do was get away from her, get in the bathroom and wash my face so I could go to work. But I thought to myself, why does he do that? Why don't we just buy him some liquor, you know? I didn't realize that, you know, he was drinking whatever he could get his hand on that had alcohol in it. And I never did that, but if I'd have continued and lived, I probably would have, or anything else that I could have got my hands on. But anyway, she died, and I'm working on a farm, and that's all I'd ever, you know, I say that's all I'd ever wanted to do. I knew when I was maybe to farm and drink liquor. And here I am, I'm fixing to get fired from a farm. Now, you're getting pretty bad when you can't even work on a farm. And because, again, I could work. I knew how to work. I was a good worker. And I'd let them know that when they would talk about, you know, they couldn't tolerate it anymore. And I'd tell them, you know, I said, well, and at that time, the doctor who my mother had worked for, he was part owner of that farm, and he wanted to put me on antabuse, and I told him I wouldn't take it. And he talked to me about being an alcoholic. I told him I wasn't an alcoholic. I said I like to drink a few beers when I get off work, and he said, yeah, a lot of people do, but they're still not drinking them at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, and showing up for work drunk or not showing up at all, and so forth. And so, you know, my Mondays would come in part of the weekend and things, and it was, you know, the handwriting was on the wall that they were going to fire me. And of course, I thought that was a bad deal, too, because I thought I was entitled to work and do what I wanted to, because my mother had been a nurse for him for so long and so forth. And I would tell them about it every so often. I would, you know, but it was crazy during that time period. But I quit, and I went into construction, and I didn't know anything about construction either. But I was going to be out of town, and I thought maybe, you know, that things would change. And first day on that job was down in Orangeburg, South Carolina, and the one of the part owners of the company, when we got to the motel that night or late that afternoon, he handed me a credit card and asked me to go fill his truck up with gas, and he handed me a $10 bill, and he said, "Do you drink?" And I said, "Yeah, I drink a little bit." And he told me to go by the liquor store and get a fifth of whatever it was he was drinking. But I remember a time he told me that, I said, "Boy, I got it made." The man owned the company, you know, he drinks, and for years I worked for that company. I traveled with him. I'm young enough to, stay out half the night, maybe all the night, drinking and doing the deal and getting up the next day and getting back to the motel time enough to change clothes, go to work and stuff. And I was able to do that for quite a while. But what was happening, see, most time we were working out of town and traveling, and we'd have to leave on Sunday afternoon or either early on Monday mornings. And a lot of times on Sunday afternoon and Monday mornings, I wasn't where I was supposed to be at because I didn't have anything to drive. If I had anything to drive, I didn't have a driver's license. You know, and I was always riding with the superintendent. He was a great guy. He put up with a lot of crap from me and so forth. And he'd try to find me before he would leave. He couldn't a lot of times, and they would leave. So naturally, here I am, you know, I'm not going to work that week. And I'd stay just laid up drunk all week at the bootleggers and so forth. And sometimes that week would turn into 2 weeks, you know, because and then finally I'd have to go back to work because the people, these bootleggers, they would get me sober, and they were good people. And I tell people probably the reason they wanted to get me sober so I could go back to work so I could pay them what I owed them. But anyway, and maybe I'll tell you a little bit more about them later on. But they were good people, and I'd get back to work, and it was getting bad. And I wound up down in Macon, Georgia, and on a job down there. It was a 2-year job, and that's where I got married. I got thinking, you know, hey, hadn't tried that deal. Maybe that's what I need, a family and children and so forth. And I quit. And what happened was, the child came, it was Christy, and I remember it. But you know, being married and everything, it didn't change anything. I drank more probably because I could drink at home and get drunk and pass out and just get up. You know, I didn't have to go to work because if I still had liquor at the house and all. It was crazy down in Macon. I had one store I'd go to buy beer at, and that was the store I'd buy where I was, I was in pretty good shape and maybe getting off work and looking good like a good, honest, hard-working man. And we didn't work but 4 days a week down at 410. And then the other place I'd go to, and I'd be shaking and everything else, and rattling the counter while they were trying to get the change and stuff like that. And they saw what a drunk I was, but I was trying, to project the image, and it was just a crazy lifestyle. And I came back to North Carolina after those 2 years. I convinced my wife, she was Georgia, but I said, go back to North Carolina with me, I'll straighten up. She was pregnant with our second child then, but she did come to North Carolina with me, and nothing changed. I got back drinking creek liquor, white liquor, and I worked over at Fort Bragg for a while, and then I went to work in Laurinburg, and rolled around till October of 1977. And it was a Sunday morning, and I woke up, and I came to. That's the way it was. I came to, and it was like any other morning. And what I remember that Sunday morning was I had promised my sister, my half sister, that I would come down to me and the wife and daughter, and Chris was born then. So, 2 children. We would go down to her house in Lumberton and eat. And of course, I did what I normally did on Sunday morning. I went to the bootleggers and got some 100 proof Smirnoff, and I drank, and I went back home and got ready to go. And I stopped by the bootleggers to get some more to take with me, because I knew that if I was going to eat, I had to have something to keep me from throwing forward, shaking, and all that. I was telling somebody the other day, I spent a lot of time in my life back when I was drinking, eating finger food. Foods you didn't have to use forks or spoons or anything like that with, because I couldn't handle them. I could get 2 hands on a hamburger and get it up. I could shake a French fry in my mouth, but I couldn't handle a fork. I had to do it. And I used to sit, and have a plate of food in front of me, and people ask me, "Well, you're not going to eat?" Well, I'm not hungry, And a lot of times I'd be hungry, but I couldn't. I wouldn't let them see me try to pick up a fork and deal with it. And man, I'd sit there and think, boy, that food would be good on my stomach probably. But anyway, and so I knew it would be that way that Sunday if I didn't have that with me. And I remember squatting down side of my truck, car, whatever it was, reaching up under the seat and getting that bottle of liquor and turning it up and thinking to myself, darn, and this is a hell of a way to have to live your life, And was really thinking, if this is what life is going to be like, and I'm in my late 20s then, and that I don't even know if it's worth living, But on the way home that afternoon, my wife at that time, she's on me about, you need to do something, and I'm thinking, I'll do something if you'll shut up. I knew Herb, who's still in the program. He's up in Winston-Salem now. But I knew he was in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know what Alcoholics Anonymous was. I had no idea, really. I remember riding in the back of his car one time in the literature, that we have, wherever you got them here. But anyway, the pamphlets we have, they were in the floorboard, some of them in the floorboard of his car, and I wanted to pick them up. I wanted to get some. I wanted to read about it. I wanted to see what it was. But I didn't want to see him, or I didn't want him to see me pick them up, because I didn't want him to think I was an alcoholic or anything. I'd be in a doctor's office, and there'd be a Red Book magazine laying there, and it'd have on the front alcoholism or something. I'd get it, and I'd try to turn. I didn't want nobody to see me. I wanted to find out about it. Well, see, I knew my drinking wasn't right, but and I wanted to get a good description on this alcoholism. I wanted some of that AA literature, but I wouldn't get it. Didn't ask him about it or anything else. But that night I called him, that Sunday night. It was in October of 1977. It was a World Series game on that night. I knew Herb loved baseball, and he told me, he said, when the meeting's over. Now, he wasn't at the meeting. When those cell phones in back in the day, it was attached to the wall. But anyway, he said, when the meeting's over, said, I'll get somebody to ride down there with me. I didn't understand going in pairs or anything like that, And so, sure enough, him and Liston Milliken, and Liston's dead today, but him and Liston came down that Sunday night and sat and told me about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, shared with me about their life. And I'm about drunk, and I'm thinking, why are these people doing this? Why, But again, what they told me, this was on Sunday night, said, if you'll stay sober, meet us in Rockingham at the service station there on between 74 and Highway 1 at the station still there, got a tire and detail shop there now. But anyway, they said, we're going to take you to a meeting, and they did. They brought me up here to this Wilder building that night. And that same night, we came in 2 cars, and some of you in here might have remembered Bobby Baker, that was a member of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous for a long time, and they went in 12-step Bobby Baker that night. Now, I didn't understand 12-stepping or anything else, but the car I was riding in, they followed him around to Bobby's house, and some of them come back out, and they said he ain't ready to do nothing yet. He's laying up there drunk now. They said, we're going back and talk to his wife or something. And I'm thinking, what is all this about, But anyway, they, I got back, and that Wednesday night at the Presbyterian Church where they're meeting at right now in Rockingham, I picked up, they was having a meeting there on Sunday night and Wednesday night. At that time, I picked up a white chip. They gave me a 24-hour day book. They gave me a big book, and here I am. I'm setting off on this journey called recovery. And I read that book the first few days I had it. I read a 24-hour day book each every morning. I went to some meetings. I went to 4 or 5 meetings a week, and so forth. And I didn't drink, and I went to meetings. And I listened to them, and I think, man, they ain't reading the same book I'm reading. They talk about these simple programs, simple steps, and things such as this. And I said, no, it ain't simple. And I never asked anybody. I heard them talk about sponsorship. I heard them talk about the importance of 4th step, and I thought, not me. I said, I ain't got time. Because, see, I'm feeling better. I'm working and all this kind of thing. And I've got 2 children now, and I think maybe the 3rd one's on the way. But anyway, I haven't got time, to do this 4th step. I'll do that when I retire, though, and that was my thinking. And I thought they was going to test me, I guess, because, I said, that doggone 5th step. Now, I can't do that. Not realizing you got to do a 4th step before you do a 5th step, but I decided I'd tell them I was going to do it with a cousin when they asked me. And he was in Germany. He'd be home in 3 years. And the sponsor thing, I wasn't going to ask nobody to sponsor me because I thought to myself, they'd say, man, we can't help you. That's what I figured if I told them what was going on with me and so forth. So that's all I did. I went to meetings and didn't drink. And after about 13 months, I spoke. They asked me to speak. And I think I spoke for about an hour and 45 minutes that night. I gave a good talk. We're not going to do that tonight. Don't worry about it. But anyway, and I sort of graduated from the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went about, with that time period there, I went about 2 years and 8 months and didn't drink no alcohol or do any other thing funny. I'll say I didn't drink any alcohol. I didn't drink any liquor, beer, or wine, or anything. But I drank a right good bit of NyQuil there for a while, and I knew exactly why I was drinking NyQuil. I remember, when I was drinking, I remember what I heard in AA, that you better look at them labels before you put it in your stomach, and I remembered that. What I remember later on was about the progression of the illness. I remember what they told me about that, But what happened in June of 1980, I walked into this country store. I had a masonry business. I bought a store, and I didn't need that store, and probably didn't need the masonry business because it was going down the tubes real quick too. I had 2 big checkbooks as a result of that, and didn't have no money, but I knew how to float checks and drop notes in the deposit box at the bank and things like that. Once you drop them in there, you don't get them back. You got to drop another one to explain that one. And it was just crazy, insane life. Now, a drunk's a mess, but a drunk that's dry and needs a drink, now that's an idiot. And that's sort of what was going on, and things were terrible with my wife, and like I say, the wife, 3 kids, and just it was just bad. And these contractors I was supposed to be working for, and I didn't know where I'd be headed to, maybe to Laurinburg, and I realized, man, I was supposed to be going towards Rockingham, and had to turn around. Just life, it was totally insane. And but some of the people during that time period, they would say, man, we're really proud of you. These people would see me, drink, all my drinking and everything else, see me from a child right on up, and they would say, we're proud of you. And, I said, they would even tell me my adopted mother said, Marlon would be proud of you and all. And I would think if they knew what was on the inside here, they wouldn't want to be in the same room with me. Now, see, where I'd missed the boat was program of Alcoholics Anonymous is designed to clean all that out. But I didn't do a 4-step. I didn't do a 5th step. I just went to meetings and didn't drink. And here I am, now I'm not even going to meetings. So it's bad. And these are the people, like I say, had seen me grow up and seen me drive a tractor into town, run up and down the sidewalks, run over benches, break them up, take that tractor and run around the ex-mayor of that town, around gas pumps there at the service station. They'd seen me ride horses into town and try to get people to open the door so I could get them in the building. I didn't want to get off because I couldn't get back on. All kind of crazy stuff such as this. They had known about the school bus episodes and all these other episodes, but they were proud of me, but they didn't know, boy, this monster was in here. And in June of 1980, I walked into that store and I told my wife, I said, you and the kids are about to worry me to death. I said, you're on my nerves. And I went behind the counter and I got me a bottle of that spirits of ammonia. And I got me a Coca-Cola. Now, I'd used many a bottle of that to detox myself, to get over the shakes and get over drunks, but I never got on one with it. And I got that Coca-Cola and poured half of it out and poured that spirits of ammonia, and it's 65 proof alcohol, 65% alcohol. And I poured it in there and I drank it. I sat in a rocking chair with my wife, and they left, If they were the problem, they gone. And I'm sitting there and I think, who am I fooling? But I got me another Coca-Cola and another bottle and drank it, and I knew who I was fooling. I closed up and I went to South Carolina to the bootlegger. These people I told you that had been so good to me and probably saved my life on a few occasions. But what they did, I woke them up and told them what I wanted, 100 proof Smirnoff. And they said, oh God, Lauren. They thought I was up there to get it for my uncle. They said, as he got back on the drunk, and I said, no, this is for me. And they looked me in the eye and they said, Harold, please don't start back drinking. And I told them I've got to. And I did, I had to. I don't think I would have made it another day without drinking. Like I say, you talking about misery. You talking about idiocy, insane, crazy thinking, crazy behavior, I remember my ex-mother-in-law being up at the house, and it was cold that night. God, I think it was about 10 degrees and everything, and something like, resentments. I didn't understand resentments. I'd missed that in AA when I was going to the meetings and everything, I'm out with a shotgun shooting because I got mad about something. I don't even know what it was. And coming back in the house, and they didn't know where I'd shot myself or anything else, and just crazy, insane behavior because of the disease of alcoholism, whether you're drinking or not drinking, But what happened as a result of that night, I stayed drunk for 3 days, and I drank close to the colony, back behind the flea market, where we was building an underground house back there. And for 3 days, and it's in June, it's hot, and boy, I'm laying in the cab of my truck, and just I get out, and the only reason I was at work, my nephew was driving me to the job, and I wasn't able to work. I was just drinking that old hot bubbling vodka, and they said flies were flying in and out of my mouth. You know how old drunk he was, laying there with his mouth open and all that. And I'd get out and make a scene every once in a while, and so forth. But after 3 days, I sort of came to it. I realized, dang, I remember what they talked about in AA about this disease being progressive, and I knew it was progressive because prior to that, I used to could drink, and get up and go to work the next day. But there 3 days, I wasn't even able to work. Just laid in the truck. So I decided to do what I'd done many a time. I decided to quit. But it wasn't but a day or two. I didn't decide to go back to AA. And what happened was, in a day or two, I was slipping here, there, and everywhere else, buying beer, buying liquor, whatever. Next 8 months, I pretty well stayed drunk. And what I pray was my last drunk. I spent about 2 weeks down in Florida. And that's a story in itself. With God's grace, I got home. And like I say, that's a story in itself. And I think it was on a Thursday night. And I didn't go home because I knew I wasn't welcome at home. And I went to my brother's. And my brother, on several occasions, he had told me, he said, if you need help, I'll take you somewhere. And I told him one time I'd go, but that Sunday morning when I came to, I told him, no. I said, I don't need that. You know, he was gonna take me somewhere. And I never have asked him where he was gonna take me that time. Might have been to the colony, but that time when I got to his house, he told me, he said, what you gonna do? He said, you know, you can't go on the way you're going. And so I called Esteem Turnage. He's dead now, but he was in the program. He's the guy that I really admired and looked at in the program and so forth. And I called him, and that Friday night I called out to Samaritan Colony. And that Saturday morning my brother took me out there, and that was February 21st of 1981. And he left me, and he tells me today that he told me to stay, and he said it's the only thing I've ever done. I hadn't left since. But anyway, he left me, and I stayed. And what happened was the first few days there, I was whipped. God, I was sick, and I was powerless. I couldn't do anything. If they told me to sit on this tree 3 hours today, I'd have sat beside that tree for 3 hours. The next day, if they said go out there and sit outside for 3 hours, I'd have went out there and sat outside for 3 hours. I'd have done whatever they said. I was totally powerless. But after about 2.5 weeks, it was on a Thursday, and I remember it well, and the power had returned. That Wednesday night, a family had visited me. They had a song service on Wednesday night, and a family had visited me, and their little boy, I don't know, he's 9, 10 years old, but his grandfather, I had bought that store from, and see, I'd abandoned all that, didn't tell him I was leaving it. And that man went out of the way to sell it to me and so forth. He realized that was a mistake. But anyway, there his grandson, he used to hang around at the store with me, and he was up there, his family visited me and everything, and he was sitting there and just happy as he could be to be sitting next to me. And I thought, son, if you just knew what a rotten human being I was, you wouldn't be that happy or anything. And if I could have got my hand around a fifth of liquor that night, I'd have drank it right there during that song service. And the next day, Mac Willingham, who was the director and chaplain there, right before lunch, he told me, he said, stay in the classroom here, I want to talk to you a minute. And we sat eye to eye, and he told me some things about myself that, and it wasn't bad, but what he told me, and he said, what I want you to do is wrestle with it this weekend, and if you want to talk about it, knock on my door Monday. And I thought to myself, I said, yeah, I won't be here Monday. But what happened was Monday I was, and I remember after lunch that day thinking, dang, what am I going to talk about when I knock on that door? But I knew I needed to knock on that door. And what I did, I finally went back there and knocked on that door, and I sat down in a rocking chair there in his office. And what I realized today is this, is I opened the doors here. Now, I hadn't done a 4-step. They didn't do first steps or anything like that then. It was pretty different. But anyway, I hadn't done anything, really. But I realized today what I did, I opened these doors here and shared with another human being a little bit of the hurt, a little bit of the pain, a little bit of the guilt, a little bit of all that crap that was in me, all that monster, that had been lashing out, and then I had to keep sedated with alcohol. Because if I hadn't, no telling what would have happened those last 8 months. And that set in motion a willingness to, when it came time to get a pen and a pad and start writing out my 4th step. And when I got through with that, it was an 8-week program then, but when I got through with it, I found somebody to sit down with to do a 5th step, and I didn't have to wait for a person to come back from Germany. And what we did, we pulled off that legal pad as we looked at the man I did the 5th step with, of course, it was Mac. And we would circle the things and pull them over in the margin of that legal pad, the defects, the exact nature, the motivating factor behind my wrongs. And time after time after time, selfishness, self-centeredness kept popping up, along with all the other defects, jealousy, envy, and all that stuff that I didn't want to admit to, But yeah, I had it on paper. And he helped pull it out, and we looked at it and so forth. As a result of that, I was able to put him in God's hand and humbly asked him to remove him on his timetable. What I realized today as I stand here, I still have them all. I got a little selfish, self-centered the other day, and I forget what it was, and I still get angry. I wanted to chase somebody down the other day because they blew the horn at me.
Sure.
And I think they were running about 70 miles an hour, and they wasn't sure whether I was going to pull out in front of them or not. So they blew the horn, probably the thing they should have done. I wasn't going to pull out in front of them, but they probably didn't know that. And they blew the horn. Made me mad, the audacity. But again, I still have all those character defects, but, God's brought me a long ways. And for that, I'm grateful. And I was able to make amends, start making amends. And that mother who had raised me and sacrificed for me, and the night before she died, the next morning, I was at the hospital drunk. Blackout. I didn't intend to do that. I just went home and changed clothes, take a shower, because we knew she was going to die. But I stopped to get something to drink, and the next thing I knew, I was back at the hospital, out of my mind. Or like I say, I didn't know it because I was in a blackout, but it got me out. And the next morning, before I got back over there, she was dead. But as I stand here today, I know I'm the person that she wanted me to be. And she molded me a lot, my outlook about alcoholism. She didn't call it alcoholism, she called it drunks. But she would talk about what good people they are. But she said when they drank, they undone. Everything they'd done good, they undid when they started drinking. But yet it was the drunks that she wanted to do the work around the house. She needed painting or anything done. But she said they had to get sober first, but that's the people she would get. And it's great that Dakota gave me the opportunity tonight to be in a room full of good people. Here's what we think about Christmas Eve. I was telling Jim, asked if he's ready for Christmas. And as a kid, I used to play hide and go seek. I don't know if kids still play that today or not, but hide and go seek, still play it. I didn't know whether you did or not. Thought she was sleeping. But, we say, ready or not, here I come. And so I think Christmas has said, ready or not, here it comes. And it'll be with us for a few hours. So I hope each and every one of you have a blessed Christmas, and that you experience God's love, God's grace, and that you experience that peace that I was able to experience this morning for just a moment. That's all it said. We will know peace. It didn't say we're going to have it all the time, but we will know peace. So I hope you will know peace during this Christmas season. Thank you, Dakota, for having me.